Good evening, sir.
This is episode 87 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast with your host, Brett and CH. Today's topics, got a great show for you guys. First one is KYC inevitable? You had sent me a tweet earlier in the week and it had talked about KYC, and we'll talk about that. I always think that's a fascinating topic to think about, especially as we move into the 2020 decade. The next topic, China's central bank digital currency is back on the mat. There was recently a leak of their digital wallet demo and what that looks like. Pretty interesting that they actually put like a physical, it looks like a bill in there in the wallet. I thought that was kind of interesting, but that topic really goes along with the last topic, which is the anatomy of a fiat currency collapse. And that was an article written by Alasdair Macleod, who Lawrence Leppard had tipped us off about when we interviewed him a few weeks ago. And definitely go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already. And the article talks a lot about the same stuff that we talk about. He's definitely bearish on fiat currencies in general, and that whole system kind of coming to an end here shortly, actually very shortly from his perspective. But I thought that was a good time to combine that topic with central bank digital currencies, because if you're going to end fiat, what's your replacement, right? What is the new thing, the new currency that you move to? Because that's what happens when currencies collapse. A new one needs to be adopted or used, and that's crazy to imagine using something else's money that we aren't already using today. Definitely mind blowing. But with that being said, how are you this week, man? It was a long week. Happy Sunday.
Yeah, happy Sunday. I'm alive. Doing well. It is end of April. We are still here. Tesla is still here. Stonks are going up on Friday. The futures are down right now a little bit, but other than that, I'm doing pretty well. Getting some sun to ward off any viruses. Some good stuff out there. Big Bitcoin close here in an hour from now, 59 minutes to be exact. Big weekly 2-week close. Big things. From a technical analysis price action point. But other than that, this KYC stuff we were talking about earlier, it's pretty crazy. I saw this from Josh Nomics. It is Josh and then Nomics, like economics, but just Nomics. Anyways, it was basically just his thought. Here, I'll read his tweet actually. It says, because if you're not watching, you won't see it, but quoting him, another thought, KYC is coming eventually. We all understand that. But which derivatives exchange would you trust with that info? Almost all have been hacked, are incorporated in some country where you have no rights to legal action. MEX, Nance, Bybit, Deribit, and FTX. And it's a very valid point. Like if you are trading or just have funds on exchange, and I've seen many people mention this, if you are going to have funds on exchange, one, never have all your funds on one exchange. That's just bad. That's a very bad habit. That's a very easy way to lose everything. If you're going to have funds on exchange, spread them out across multiple exchanges. It lessens the risk of just losing like minimum 2, but really 3 or 4 or more, obviously. The more the better. Just spreading out your funds, at least, obviously, cold storage is the best way, but if you do have funds on exchange, do not have them all in the same one. But going back to the KYC portion, that's also another factor with this. Like even into mid 2017, there was no KYC, and then come fall in late 2017, it just became just sweeping KYC pretty much everywhere. And like if you were in America, you just started to slowly get screwed.
Yeah, no, it's there's a couple of points that I wanted to make with this tweet, because I do find it to be an interesting topic. KYC itself, the action of performing KYC, is such a point of friction, even just outside of your basic privacy standpoint, filling out all your personal info, all that stuff. And then from the Bitcoin crypto standpoint, all of a sudden you need to upload all these images of your identity, whether it be passports, driver's license. I mean, just a crazy amount of stuff to upload just in order to have access to the platform to do whatever you want to do. In this case, we're talking about exchanges. And I remember in 2017 being able to sign up for exchanges And all you needed was like your email address,
password, email address, password,
password, and you could put a
2FA
on it or whatever.
exactly.
All right, yeah. But that experience of not having to do KYC was very powerful, and like I think I take it for granted now because all that is gone unless you're still using BitMEX or one of the other exchanges that doesn't require KYC. It was just such a great onboarding experience. And I think the special thing to think about is, just the Bitcoin as a technology, a monetary technology, really enables the no KYC just marketplace and transactions, because when you send your Bitcoin to the exchange, the person on the other side of that, they have it, like they have taken custody of it. They don't really need to know your personal information because they have custody of the funds. And I think the only time when KYC, even people who are anti KYC want KYC or something like that, is because of disputes with exchanges. Exchanges do get hacked. Like, you want to be able to take legal action against them if they were to lose all your funds. The problem is, if you're trading on an exchange you shouldn't be trading on, you're not going to take legal action against them because you were doing something illegal. So it's like there's this really weird conundrum, and I'm sure some people will trust certain exchanges, and I think that's fine. They've built up a good reputation. BitMEX has a huge insurance fund that they've built up, so that would be one that I would be way more comfortable with using. But when I started thinking about that, the being able to take legal action against somebody else, especially in a non-KYC world, do you ever think there's going to be like a new KYC? And what I mean by that is possibly some sort of reputation based identity, or maybe your identity through a node or something like that. Because I was listening to a podcast episode with the CEO of Paxful, and they do more like gift card transactions with Bitcoin as like the settlement layer. And it's really interesting to him talk about that, because the majority of his business is done in Africa and other countries where basically the majority of the population's unbanked. And he was trying to make a point, like, these people don't have any government issues IDs, so they can't hop online and take part in the global economy. Like, they just can't engage with you at all, specifically because they don't have KYC. And I think he was trying to make the point that some sort of KYC could be beneficial, not necessarily from a standpoint of all your personal information, but something that like a substitute KYC, maybe that's a little bit more private, but at least gives you access to engage in a global economy. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I was going to say civic Vinny Ligum. Sorry, I've been waiting to say that for like 30 seconds. I just had to wait for you. That's a good question. It's like, is there going to be some kind of like answer to this, like some blockchain identity or something? I don't know. I mean, as you and I both know, it's like it is a pain in the butt, like uploading passports, uploading IDs, documents, etc. It is a pain in the butt. It is like proof of address, proof of funds, proof, etc. It's just a pain in the butt, to be honest. But
yeah,
it is what
it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, like, and as people are saying, like here, it's like in some circumstances, KYC is good for you on your end from the legal representation, especially if you're a U.S. citizen, having a U.S. exchange, if you're a Canadian citizen, Canadian exchange, etc. If you're English exchange, but like if you're trading, just an anonymous account on an exchange and they get hacked or they exit, I don't know, it's like you're kind of screwed. Like Cryptopia went down. I know that was a big deal for crypto Twitter, because there's a lot of people that just sling like fucking single sat alts on there, praying that they'll 1000x or something, like 10,000x one day.
Right. No, it's interesting because on one hand, I'm so anti KYC. I don't think it's necessary for 99.9% of the things that you would need it for. The simple email address and account number is pretty much it. But there's that circumstance where you want to take legal action, and that's where I don't know if it starts to fit in, but I think it's just something to really think about. The other thing that this had got me thinking about was, you know, the lack of KYC, the no KYC type of exchanges where anybody can kind of hop on and participate in a global type of economy. I don't wonder what that means for the future in regards to, like, I don't know, the tokenization of assets or equities. What's the difference between, well, if I'm on E-Trade, buying stocks or something like that, if it were, let's say, tokenized in the background and running on top of something else, I don't think I would know the difference, right? The user interface would be the same. Perhaps you'd get some of the benefits of not being able to have rehypothecation, like on stocks that are just overly issued and no one's really keeping track of how many shares are actually in circulation, and maybe you don't run into those kinds of issues. Blockstream's liquid sidechain, they have this kind of functionality where you're issuing assets on top of the Bitcoin network, and it sounds all good and stuff like that. I don't wonder if that's so far away that it doesn't necessarily make sense yet, or do you think we're going to see not the rise of ICOs again, but maybe something similar where people start issuing equity, tokenized equity, and maybe it pays some sort of dividend or something like that. But I think being able to have access to that on a global standpoint is just kind of interesting. And that goes back to the no KYC, right? Why, if you are in Africa and you have, 100,000 Satoshis that you want to invest in something else, and you want to be, and that they're based in America or whatever, and you wanted to buy equity in that, but it's tokenized, now you can do that. And the KYC thing doesn't matter anymore. I think that's where it gets interesting.
Are these African males, are they funding OnlyFans in the US?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, sorry. That's a good point. Tokenized investing seems inevitable because it's just so simple.
Right.
And I think, and then you gotta wonder if that does become a thing, like me being able to give you like 10 shares of Apple, like just hypothetically, if that
Right, being able to really transfer those from person to person or from entity to entity.
Where does that put brokerages or anything like that? That would change.
Right.
I mean, you still have exchanges per se, but brokers per se.
Right.
That would be a huge crush to middlemen. But exchanges would still exist, obviously, in some sense. I mean, even if you have decentralized, you still want exchanges for liquidity.
Right. No, it's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I'm sure I have previously, but I hadn't thought about it in terms of this. It's just, and a lot of this, it really just goes back to the no KYC part, because I think that just causes so much friction, and you could really see the removal of this single regulation, right? The thought of KYC, the need to do it, all of these regulations where, U.S. citizens or citizens from other countries can't participate in other things. I just find that, imagine if that were to be removed, there would just be such an explosion of productivity, because things could get funded so quickly. And I think it's really powerful and a little underestimated right now, because the whole ICO bubble kind of put a big damper on that. And I'm glad that's kind of came and went. I think that was the first. That was like the .com bubble, right? You saw all these ridiculous kind of businesses launching their tokens, but the token was kind of useless because no one was going to use it as a utility token. I'm talking about an actual business that wants to issue shares, right? And those are going to be tokenized. But I don't know, take away KYC, I just think you have so much productivity. It would be awesome to see.
Yeah. No, if you see my screen, Crypto Humor, what do you see in the gold chart? What kind of tomfoolery do you see there? I like screwed with the auto. I made the numbers so it can run up to $6,000.
Oh, I see.
It's 6-month candles, so that's why it's not log chart. It just squished it.
Right.
It's just like, you can see like these are 6-month candles. If that breaks out, it's going to get pretty ludicrous, I feel like. And considering what we've seen lately, I don't mean to just talk about this randomly, because I know we're talking about KYC. I guess we're talking about digital currency too. So I guess gold tokens could be considered because we have the
Right.
Tether Gold. I don't know what's the ticker for Tether Gold. Do you remember what it was?
It's XAU USDT.
Okay, yeah. So actually, yeah, that makes sense. But no, I mean that's gonna be it. It'll be really interesting because okay, think about when oil went negative, um, and everyone became oil traders. Think about how quickly everyone's gonna be like precious metal traders when gold, like palladium, silver, all these metals just go retarded. Because
Yeah.
there's I think what we're about to realize is if things do reopen, there's a lot of money just sloshing around, and money has to go somewhere, and it's just gonna run to things.
No, I think that's a good point, that retail mindset, that FOMO really comes in, and looks like, and I think this kind of wraps into the talking point that we're going to get to about the anatomy of a fiat currency collapse. Is the question is that being priced in at the moment, and are you seeing that priced inness reflected in gold, right? So gold's been going up. It's almost like, are other people starting to come to this realization? Maybe the whole fiat thing is coming to an end here, or at least this is the beginning of the end, and who knows how long that takes to play out. But things can get really wacky really fast, and that realization that everybody comes to happens super quickly.
Yeah, it's like overnight type of thing. It's like the coronavirus thing. Like that's how when fiat currency ends, it's gonna be like that. It's not gonna be like everyone's gonna be thinking about it for a year. It's gonna be there's gonna be people who had it right for a while who've just been sitting and waiting. There's gonna be people that just make it before and get enough hard assets, and then there's gonna be people that it's just gonna be a shit show. But
Right.
the timing this again. Like I think I commented on like Dave Collins' tweet. I was like these these events like this market right now, the equity market. This top, if this is a top theoretically, it could take another 6 months. People don't understand that. This is like nature. Like think about 2000. Like that thing was a monster, dude. When you think about the 2000 equity, like think about it. From the 80s, they just rose, like the Nasdaq. Like I mean, there was the little 87 crash, but when you look at the 87 crash, like on the Nasdaq and the Dow Jones, and then you look at just like scale it up to 2000. I can put it on the screen. Let's see if I can get like dude, this is a 6 month chart. Does that like nothing? Doesn't even scale in, dude. Look at that. It's just ridiculous. Like the topping process takes a while.
Right.
It's a monster.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point, talking about how long that it really takes for these things to play out. And I guess I feel like we loved talking about this in December 2018 when it felt like the whole world was ending and all this stuff. And now here we are over a year and a half later, and it's things are still kicking, and finally it seems like we're seeing some action again. But when you talk about these things happening overnight, it makes me look towards things like the next topic, which would be China's central bank digital currency. And we've talked about this on a bunch of episodes because news keeps coming out about it. And now it looks like they're set to really start testing this stuff. And, one of the problems is that when central banks start issuing a digital currency and there's you move away from a cash-based society into a fully cashless society, you're getting all of the tracking features that come along with a cashless society. And that's super scary, especially when, citizens can just be censored for thinking the wrong way, for maybe voting a certain way, for eating a certain way, for joking about certain things. All of a sudden you can lose access to all your funds, and that becomes super scary. And in this latest update with China's central bank digital currency, it looks like Starbucks, McDonald's, and Subway, which are all chains that also operate inside of China, were named by the People's Bank of China's list of firms that will start testing the national digital currency in the future. And the other interesting point that I wanted to mention to you was it's almost a direct competitor to Alipay, right? So Alipay is it's owned by Alibaba, but it's used more than Visa and MasterCard in China, right? So everyone who uses Alipay is already on board with QR codes. They know what they're doing. Not really that big of a deal to make that switch, right? They can go head on, but that seems like they would really compete against each other. So do you think the state would want to try to just eliminate Alipay, or do you think they would rather issue the currency in a new digital format and then let Alipay, WeChat, and everyone else kind of duke it out and compete on the consumer level to actually distribute the money?
Or just incorporate Alipay. I mean, think about, like, we basically are nationalizing U.S. industries right now, and the same thing is happening across the globe. Every country is nationalizing industries, and like you think about like spying done by countries. Like Huawei is like just China infiltrating everyone. Like Britain, I'm pretty sure voted Huawei out now. Like it's a big deal. Like this whole 5G thing, and then like the U.S. too. Like all these corporations, because I won't even say companies. They're all large corporations, are just like spying on each other now. That's the reality. I think everyone's slowly starting to realize is everyone's spying on each other.
Yeah, I mean, surveillance capitalism
and
sucks.
So like yeah, and that's the same thing as like what I'm saying. Like it's like they'll just incorporate it. If anything, Alipay will get incorporated with the state.
Right.
It's just the same as like maybe like Bezos bucks becomes part of the state. Like who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I find it so fascinating because, and I know we talk about it a lot, but I like bringing it back up as more and more news comes out about it, because I feel like you and I are on the same page, where a lot of the people that we follow, a lot of our own individual thoughts are, the show doesn't go on forever. And as other fiat currencies are losing purchasing power relative to the dollar, what happens when those currencies get to the point where they start failing on a more frequent basis? And what do you move to after the fact? And I look at the China central bank digital currency and I say, okay, they're probably like, well, worst case scenario, if our fucking currency fails, we're going to need you need a new system to go to. You need a new peg to go to, and you better get that technology up and running or be able to move it in as quickly as possible, because then you've got a real shit show on your hands if the currency collapses and there's unrest and people are starving and stuff like that. I mean, it can get really, really terrible. So like, so much is going on. You have the dollar being really strong because it's super in demand. You have other currencies that are just showing how weak they are relative to the dollar. Then you have things like gold, where currencies, even the strongest of fiat currencies, have just been crushed by gold over the long run. And then you have Bitcoin over here in the corner, this tiny little thing, relatively speaking, to everything else. And, it's appreciated more than any other asset in human history. So it's like there's so much going on, and I just feel like you need to be able to switch to something else. And I think that's why we like talking about this topic in particular.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say one of us was Wolf of Wall Street. I was pulling that off the fucking clip. I just have to put the bit for anyone who's just on the ride.
Okay, that's one of us. Google gobble, one of us. We accept that one of us. Google gobble, one of us. We accept that one of us. Google gobble.
Okay, sorry, I just had to play it one time. I hope people heard that. I hope you've seen that movie. But anyways, yeah, this is just one of those scenarios where I think we are facing, as we've seen recently with coronavirus, just a larger and larger draconian state, and it's everywhere. We're seeing it everywhere. So it's going to be interesting to see where this all goes. And then in terms of the fiat currency collapse part of this, I think a lot of people think, they're all falling, but it's going to be a different time. When you look at like the end of World War I, like Austria's currency collapsed first before the Germans' currency collapsed. So like Germans were still enjoying like going over into Austria in 1921 and 22, even though Germans were almost in free fall at that point. I mean, they were inflating, but not at the same rate as Austria. So you go to Austria, and like one liter like of German beer or whatever was basically 6 liters of Austrian beer or whatever. So it was like ridiculous. Like you get a lot on the cheap. And so I think that's what we're going to see here, and it would be really interesting to see this play out throughout the whole decade. It might take that long,
Right.
and like who knows? The U.S. dollar might be the last one standing, as everyone's currency keeps, because the U.S. dollar is one of the few currencies and fiat currencies that the gold has not broken out against yet. It's broken out against like the pound. It's broken out against the New Zealand pound. It's broken out against the Australian dollar or New Zealand dollar, excuse me. It's broken out against the franc, you name it, against the yen. But like, so it'd be interesting if it takes a whole decade for all fiat currency to collapse before everyone moves, or does everyone kind of decide at some point we're going to a different system, like a Bretton Woods scenario?
Right.
But it's going to be interesting to watch this happen, and if it is like a decade of all fiat currencies collapsing, like we've seen with Venezuela recently and Argentina, like are people in the U.S. like us going to be able to take advantage of like, oh, look at England, the pound's become worthless. We can go there for cheap and go out and party and do eat and go to the best restaurants for nothing. Is that can be a scenario? That's just a very hypothetical scenario. It could be other countries, but I was just using that. But
no, it's those are really good points, and I noticed you kind of took that that great story about Austria kind of hyperinflating first, and then the Germans going over and buying stuff on the cheap from Alasdair Macleod article that I read. Also, it was really, really good. Definitely recommend listening to it. But I went to Argentina in October 2018, and I was surprised at how far my dollar could go buying wine, meat, going out to dinner. I mean, it was amazing how cheap it felt to me, just because my purchasing power could go so much further in Argentina. So I can imagine that playing out again, where people want to take vacations to other countries because it's pretty advantageous to go over there. But to keep talking about this article here. And the title of this article is Anatomy of a Fiat Currency Collapse. And there were just a couple of quotes out of this. Definitely go read the entire thing. But since we talk about a lot of it week in, week out, I didn't want to, rehash everything. But a couple of these quotes were, he's essentially calling for the collapse of fiat money and that govs will have to reset to and issue a new currency. Okay, so, that's fascinating in itself. And as you just said, that could take a decade, and you might see it play out globally and almost like from country to country, right? Like dominoes falling one by one. But he made a few interesting points here about what's happening right now. And in 2008, he said the Fed already supports housing prices by buying mortgage debt. It hopes that by preserving the wealth effect, investors will not only continue to feel well off, but be encouraged to keep investing. The policy is to swamp financial markets with new money. The other side of the Fed buying financial assets of any description is the payment for them, expanding the quantity of money in circulation. You and I like talking about the real estate market in particular because it's thought of as a big store of value asset, and there's just been so much new money pumped into that asset class that it is truly unbelievable. And then he says the Fed's monetary policy replicates John Law's attempts at keep the bubble going in 1720 France. Law failed to maintain the price of just one asset, the Company of the Indies, his Mississippi venture. And they printed the currency to buy more shares. And within 7 months, the currency had collapsed and priced in worthless currency. And then the shares fell from 12,000 down to 1 or 2,000. And he says this project will fail for the same reason. No one can fool all of the people all the time. And I think you just mentioned that a couple minutes ago. And it is increasingly obvious that both the currency and financial assets values will collapse John Law style, probably by the end of this calendar year, if precedents are any guide. There will be a new currency, whether it is an attempt by government reset, which will only delay the ending of fiat currency for a few more months, or one that evolves from gold or silver and their credible substitutes. And then he talks about Bitcoin. Maybe that's an option as well. But it's I don't know. What did you think about all that when you read that article?
It's pretty crazy. The John Law thing, I remember reading that from the Bitcoin Standard. That's pretty crazy. Again, these are fiat currency bubbles, but these fiat currency bubbles, people forget, weren't on a global scale. They were on a regional, if not, country or state or local scale. when they happened in the past. So it was that portion of a social area getting unrest, not the whole globe. And that's what we're kind of seeing right now. And you and I talk about it a lot over the past year, whether you talk about like Hong Kong, France, Venezuela, you name it, there's a bunch of places, lots of protests. And it's not really getting coverage. There's always that quote that the revolution won't be televised, and that's pretty apparent by now. Like, as you sent me that video from San Diego earlier, like, where people are just out willy-nilly, basically telling everyone, telling the government basically to fuck off, it seems like.
Yeah, no. It was my buddy who lives there. It was literally just happening today, right down the street from him, and I thought it was amazing to see. People are already kind of pissed. It's been like a month or so far, and I think everybody's kind of had it at this point. But
there's not enough blood. There's more blood.
Yeah. It's
that's like I hate to say it because I know people have died from this, and it's like it's sad, but the reality is that like the economic fallout from this is going to be far greater and have far more consequences, especially if there's food shortages, than coronavirus will. I hate to put it that way.
Yeah,
it's really that simple, and that's more than enough to cause issues.
Right, and that everybody had, well, not everybody, a lot of people have not been making that comment or connection in as a reason to continue the shutdown, keep it, just have complete disregard for everyone who's trying to take care of themselves. And it's a shame because you have a large group of people who really want to, go back to work and start taking care of themselves and their family, and they're kind of done with the whole shelter in place. Yeah, it's really tough. But it's I don't know. It makes me feel like right after reading this that I'm starting to think we might see currency start to compete again to be money or monies. And are you gonna play this clip?
No, I wasn't. I pulled it open and didn't mean to have it start playing. Go ahead, keep talking.
I was gonna say, as currencies are getting weaker, as you feel like the reset is coming at some point in time, what's to say monies don't compete again? And it would be just so beneficial for everybody. Who's to say Tether Gold isn't used to issue currency or isn't used as a money? Who's to say central bank digital currencies won't try to compete? Who's to say Bitcoin isn't going to compete in that circle? And I just wonder if the collective thought around the current monetary system, if everyone's bearish on that and everyone's like, holy shit, the money's worthless, it would be amazing to see currency start to compete again. And it makes me, even though I thought at first Tether Gold was kind of silly, maybe it's not silly if you're going to have money start to compete and the best money will just ultimately be adopted or different monies. I don't know. It is interesting to think about. Yeah, why not, right? Like free banking almost. You're free to create whatever currency you want, and if the people will just adopt it.
As you talk about Lindy effect, longer it's around, more, it has to be used, obviously. But, over time it'll get used. If it's not, obviously it dies off. But it's going to be interesting here to see where we end up. I think U.S., we are a little cushioned because everyone needs dollars right now. That's like what everything's denominated in. So U.S. citizens, we're on the cushy side of this. And it'll be interesting to see. I don't even know what the DXY is at. DXY is at right now. That's the dollar index. I mean, it's not too bad right now, taking off again. I mean, could be interesting if this just rips faces off here. Because that means it'll just crush every other currency, which will be sad if you're on the other end of the exchange. If you're not hedged properly. People don't even think about that. Like, if you do international business, you can get really screwed if you're not hedged. When you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars, to buy certain parts or stuff in different countries like China, and like when currencies change 5-10% over a year, that's a lot of money that disappears, a lot of purchasing power gone.
Yeah, I mean, being a U.S. citizen and living in the U.S., and the majority of our listeners are in the U.S., you don't know about that at all. Your money's always worked and everything's priced in your money anyway. So, things pretty much work out to your advantage. But the rest of the world, really has to deal with currency fluctuations, and it can significantly impact their business. And when you think about that, and like how gigantic the like Forex markets are, just trillions of dollars sloshing around on a daily basis being traded to deal with the fact that we're still on a fucking barter system, because certain countries use certain things as money and other countries use other things as money, and not everybody wants to settle in the same currency. Imagine how awesome it would be if there were one thing where you could use to settle value. And I think we're getting closer to that time where that isn't just kind of like a pipe dream, like, it would be great, but in what utopia do we have, use one thing as money, or does that make sense? And no one's going to barter again. And it's just like, it's so inefficient to really barter that way. I mean, we're talking about trillions settled daily, all these Forex nonsense. It's
buy
like
my Forex course.
Yeah, buy my Forex course. Like it's just
it's on econ courses too.
All of that just goes away.
And don't forget about that crypto course and mining. I mine too.
Right.
That's like every Instagram bot is like they're crypto Forex traders, Bitcoin mining. It's mind-boggling. Instagram's just like the shittiest thing in the world. It's full of so much shit. But Twitter's pretty bad too. There's a lot of fake Twitter guru people too. But Instagram's the worst. It's full of it all.
Yeah. No, it really is.
It's just disgusting.
But I don't know. I feel like that's pretty much everything we wanted to cover today. Looks like Bitcoin's at 7,600-ish, 77-ish right now for Sunday night. What did you say? It was a new weekly candle. Pretty much just started 45 minutes ago.
No, it's not started. There's 24 minutes left, dude. 24 minutes. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen in 25 minutes.
Dude, anything Bitcoin.
I'm so fucking pumped.
Here we go. 1 minute, man. Get ready. We should go to BitMEX, actually.
I'm just pumped for next week.
Here we go.
I'm ready for next week. I feel like this past week was an absolute shit show globally. We talked about oil earlier in the week. Bitcoin wants to move. It looks like. I just can't tell anymore.
In. Dude, look at that. Look at that earlier. When you're zoomed in, this is what happens. This is why you don't zoom in. Look at that.
Yeah, that's insane.
That spike. I don't even know what that is. Like, I have to say this first. Look at that. Like, this spike is just ridiculous. So from going up 11%, but the spike range is probably some ridiculous before we end this. Yeah, it's like a 5%, 4% range. That's ridiculous. And that, my friends, is called liquidation city.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Lots of people getting liquidated, yeah. This is why you don't try to trade low time frame. Boom. Go to the monthly. I can't even see anything anymore. Oh, look. There's no movement. It's boring. Stay there. That's my only message of today.
Yeah, that was a good way to wrap it up. This was episode 87 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate all the new YouTube viewers out there. So thanks for tuning in and subscribing. Definitely helpful. Make sure to follow us on Spotify. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That definitely helps us get more viewers. And definitely share this with anybody that you think would be interested or is new to getting into Bitcoin. Hopefully they can get something out of it. But yeah, stay safe out there. Next week's going to be fucking awesome. Yeah.
Peace. That was a fun week. Peace.